Welcome to No Room for Phonies. I think this is episode 93.
It is.
Nailed it.
7 episodes to 100. Pretty good. So today we are continuing our discussion of the book, The Song of Significance, written by Seth Godin, but we have Sebastian here as both our podcast guest and our technical director. So
Director, producer, and
director,
everything else.
producer, and setting up of equipment. So I wanted to start with a big quote, and the quote that I wanted to do is kind of to set off the discussion that we're going to have about some of the points. I just pulled out 10 discussion points from the Song of Significance, which Sebastian listened to, I read, and you've kind of read.
You don't kind of read.
Well,
I'm halfway through.
you're about partway through. So the big quote is that the leader doesn't need to do every element of the project. They need to figure out how to assemble a team that does. And we don't make widgets, we make decisions. And agency comes with responsibility. So anyway, I like that quote from the book by Seth Godin. So I'm sure that some of those things are going to come into some of the discussion that we're going to have when we start talking about the 10 points. But I mean, basically it means that leaders need to be able to figure out who are the best people to have on the team and then give them proper instructions and then let them go, right?
And
Yes.
Then when they have that sense of responsibility, then they engage in and
Right. And if they don't think of themselves as just like Lucille Ball on the assembly line putting chocolates in the box, if they actually feel like they can make a decision and that their leader trusts them, then they'll develop a sense of responsibility, right?
Yeah.
can
Absolutely.
Basically.
I need to interrupt.
Yeah.
The mic is sinking.
Yeah, I see that. It's okay. We'll take a quick pause.
Why is it sinking?
Because it's heavy.
It doesn't know how to swim. Cool. I just wanted to jump in and say about the quote. I don't exactly remember it from the book exactly like that, but I was wondering what they mean by widgets, because I know it as an Android or phone tool.
Oh,
But what? Because like a listener might be like, "What's a widget?"
Widget to me comes from industrial.
Yeah. So a long time ago, when economic professors and authors were talking about things being made rather than calling it things or stuff, they called it widgets. So it's a general word for like stuff.
Assembly line things that are made on assembly lines, which
Instead
is
of
why
using the word gadget, which sounds important, widget doesn't sound important.
Okay, so it's just a widget.
It's assembly line work.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I was talking about the Lucille Ball thing, because a lot of people know that of her putting chocolates in, and then the conveyor belt speeds up.
I mean,
she can't make a decision to slow that down or to do anything. She's just making widgets
and failing.
And
that's the comedy of it.
But she doesn't feel any responsibility for it because she has no control.
So it's not failing. This is what's happening to me, and it's funny in the moment for like us watching Lucy fail. But it's just
there's a bigger story. And the thing is, the leadership in that has not enabled their team to do the job.
Right.
Because they're not paying attention to what their skills are.
Yeah.
And putting together a team that can actually do what they've been asked to do.
Right.
So that's, to me, a problem. So anyway, the first discussion point one of the things that I read in the book, it said, don't become a victim of a system that has outlived its usefulness. And so I just wondered what that meant to you particularly.
To either of us?
To either of you.
What does it mean to be a victim of a system that has outlived its usefulness?
So a system to me that's outlived its usefulness is the manual way of getting a driver's license in the province of Ontario. How you have to go in person to take this test, and then they give you a little piece of paper to sit there It's just the system, and they've got to be more
Right.
efficient ways of.
Well, and
There can be well, it's the larger argument of things becoming more online, like more via app, more via you show up and you scan a QR code at the Service Ontario Center,
Yeah.
and then it pops up on your phone that you get a text message saying that your appointment is at this time, and you can go grab lunch and then come back for your appointment, and you don't have to sit and wait.
And it's the fact that
Yeah.
doctors in Ontario still use fax machines.
right.
When there's encrypted ways of protecting data.
Yeah, and I think lots of the reasons that lots of these examples are probably not that I'm in Service Ontario or the doctor or hospitals, but it's probably based on budget, because a higher up CEO or owner of a hospital or someone higher up the food chain is saying, well, it's worked this long, so
Yeah, they don't want to make change.
they don't want to make that change. It's like that's what's happening in my mind. I mean, I don't know
Well, I think sometimes.
but I'm trying to find another example of.
Well, I sometimes think a system that has outlived its usefulness is the idea now that, like, I think there are jobs where we have to be in the building and there, but I also think that the system of pulling everybody in across miles and miles and miles of space to have a meeting,
Oh, that doesn't make sense anymore.
I think that system has outlived its usefulness, because I think that being face to face in a room doesn't necessarily change the meeting.
And I think the biggest part of this argument for like the working from home thing is outliving its usefulness, or like working in an office outliving its usefulness, is the fact that you can't tell someone's emotion through a Zoom meeting. That's the argument. That's like the big argument that gets
that's
brought
what
up.
they use all the time, right?
Or that, or we're not we don't have a feeling of community in the office anymore. Or we don't have a feeling of community because we can only connect via Zoom, via video call. And my argument is all cameras in the world, all webcams in a new laptop in a new company are 720 HD.
Right.
If you can't tell someone's emotion in 720, what's wrong with you?
You need better eyesight.
You need better eyesight. You need
and
not because
maybe
there are people
some
with
of it-
disabilities that we
and
can't
maybe some
make
of
fun
it
of.
is
But
that people like have the ability to like turn off their cameras.
right, and I say I do agree with the notion that if you are working remotely, you should have at least once a week an on-camera meeting
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
One on-camera thing.
Okay,
that-
as a language person, there is something to be said for the fact that you can't read body language of the whole body if the person's face is too close to the camera.
Right.
So you miss gestures like dropped shoulders.
sure, but
You can even miss an eye roll if you're looking at
But-
person 16 on
right.
the grid over to the left and person 10 on the grid over
Yeah.
on the right. Eye rolls their eyes.
But I'm going to say
in a
straight
room,
up.
you don't
but there
see all
are
of
some
that
things
either.
in the world that will never be remote. Is my
Yes.
argument to
Well,
that.
and I
You'll just never be able to do that.
meetings with 10 to 15 people.
And you still don't
even
see it
more.
all.
You can't see people eye
Right.
rolling and doing all that stuff.
But you actually can probably see it better in
You can see
Zoom.
a sigh. You can see people slouching. You can see the general posture shift.
But-
I think online.
but then
you can
going further, and
I
this
think
might
online we just need to learn to look for those.
and I
Sure.
also think
but
that
it's the
there-
same thing. It's the same thing. It is so close to in person.
Yeah.
Any CEO or person, a business owner that's making the argument that Zoom is not good enough, you are wrong. Zoom is good enough.
I think.
And
it is
I
good
also
enough,
think
too.
that when
but for certain applications, no, it's not. But that's when you have to be in person. Can
but
a
I
doctor
also-
be
can
over
you
Zoom?
not-
No.
Can you not set up? Well, I'm fine with a doctor on Zoom.
Well,
depending
talking,
on-
but if you
But
have
not
a
when you want them
serious,
to actually touch you.
No,
Right.
but the doctor that I see in Toronto, he's like he can do a lot in a call.
Yeah.
right.
If he doesn't feel he can do it in the call, then he says, "I'm sorry, you have to come in."
Yeah.
But we're talking about the jobs that obviously could be done.
Like
from
I don't
home.
Yeah,
think teaching
absolutely.
jobs and places where there
No.
are like students and all that stuff, I don't think that that's appropriate. People who are student facing and client facing,
Yeah.
like in jobs like that. But the other thing is when I held meetings, I had a meeting protocol. So why can't you just have protocols
Yeah.
that
In
match
place.
Cameras have to be on.
cameras
In
on?
certain circumstances, because there are arguments from other sides of people where like, yeah, okay, you're having a rough, depressed, anxious, stressful day. You don't really feel like turning your camera on. I think there's an argument for that. But I think at least
But when you were
once
in
a
person,
week,
you had to be there and
right?
be looked
But I think
down.
once a week, you should be able to like turn your camera on at least.
Right, and if you can't do that, maybe you need
And that's and
Otherwise
if,
you
and
might
if you're
need
not
help.
if you're having a large company meeting where you have to talk to everyone in your organization on Zoom,
Yeah.
and you're expecting everyone to be in person, first of all, that's a little ridiculous because
Yeah.
but the second part to that is if you're on Zoom, there should be an expectation. Okay, the full company's meeting, we're talking, or there's a big production meeting, we're talking with everyone. Turn your camera on.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't be like, oh, I'm having a bad day on the production meeting day. No, plan ahead a little bit and know your schedule
that's-
and don't overdo yourself
Well,
or
but
work
these
yourself
are the
before that meeting.
things-
I don't know.
But these are the things that are just like professionalism and
Right.
protocol for your
Well,
company.
when I have training at the college, we have a room protocol. And so you, like, because I've gone in person, and you definitely have to have your phone off face down and laptops closed because
Yeah.
you're in training and you can't multitask. But what they build in then is they build in times because we're all managers.
Yeah.
Build
That
in
you can go
times
check your
That
phone
you can go
and-
check your phone, so answer a few emails,
Yeah.
whatever. So you can't disregard that need, but
And my biggest pet peeve in any meeting that I've ever been is someone checking their phone, or I can tell their eyes are darting
yes.
away.
And that as a
And
a
my
teacher,
argument-
that bugs me when
And
students
as
do
an
that.
argument to that, in general, that way of being, you said you accepted this meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
be here, be
be present.
Yeah.
If you cannot make a meeting because you have a crazy amount of emails you have to respond to, something's coming in that you have to deal with. That's in any job. But I guarantee you, people act that busy, but no one is really that busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
We pretend. I've been there where I'm like, oh, I'm in the office. I'm typing
because
away.
being
But-
busy is also a sign of status for people.
Right.
For a lot of
right?
people,
So
But
anyway, I
yeah.
thought that
Yeah.
I think that like driving in, like there's a lot of things about systems that have outlived their usefulness. I mean, we could talk about that, but
Yeah.
I think one of the bigger things is leaders making a decision about when it is actually necessary to assemble everybody and what that could actually mean. I'm talking like for the environment, for people's physical well-being, for people's budgets in paying for gas to drive in and wear and tear, like for leaders to actually make good decisions about when
Yeah.
it is necessary.
And then, not at my current organization, if anyone's listening from that, but at past organizations, there's definitely been a notice of, oh yeah, we want to be in the office. And guess who works from home all the time is the CEO of the company.
Oh,
yeah.
That's not cool to me.
no.
Well,
And
I'm
there's
not-
lots of organizations where they want people to be in, and that CEO is in every day at 6 a.m. And I say, great. But can I work from home? You know what I mean? Like
No, but
you do you, but like let's let everyone else make their own decision.
Yeah.
It's like one personality, one person should not dictate a crowd at work. Like it shouldn't be
And it
that one
should be
decision.
actually based on productivity, not
Yeah.
on. And I think in your environment where teachers are like student facing and whatever, the fact that people aren't in very much actually has an impact on productivity.
Yeah.
Because you have to do things as teams, like you're actually getting resources together and sharing physical resources and
Well,
things.
and the number of conversations we used to have, just turn your chair around and have a conversation with two people sitting near you, actually helped a lot of stuff happen.
Whereas
Sure.
that probably doesn't
No.
occur in your organization.
No, I mean,
Right.
there's definitely moments in the office where we can say, hey, like, what did you do for this show? And someone has a really brilliant idea. But I could also do that on Zoom chat.
Yeah.
Well, you're also are you in that other back chat channel thing?
Back chat channel thing. You're going
What's
to be
the
more
one that-
specific.
The one that starts with S, I can't remember. Swatch.
Switch swatch?
No.
I'm not in a knitting group. That's you guys.
Very funny.
Anyway, the next thing that he talks about is that everyone in order to feel significant, you need to have agency and dignity in your work.
So
Like, no matter where you are sort of in the chain of whatever,
Command.
you should have agency and dignity
So
in your work.
I love Seth Godin's writing, and I I listen to his audiobook, so I don't maybe take in the information in the same way that you do reading the book hard copy.
I think
But
you do.
I mean, about the
It's all
same.
about the same.
But when he says agency, I can't exactly put my finger on what he means by the word specific agency in that
Yeah,
sentence.
I think a lot of people would struggle with that meaning of agency because you think of the building or the
Sure, I understand dignity
right.
very clearly.
So agency is when you want to be an agent for the job that you do. You want to be involved.
Autonomy is another word to me of saying agency.
Yes,
But it's a
you
little
can work-
bit deeper because autonomy means I can work on my own and do my thing.
Okay.
Agency means I have autonomy to the point where people trust me to go and do what I need to do
yeah.
appropriately
Oh yes.
without like. and
See, I like
that's-
that. I like that word better than
See, that-
in this sentence.
To me, that's what
Yeah.
he's meaning by that. It's another level up from autonomy. Autonomy could be I stand at a widget making machine all day and nobody talks to me, but that's not
That's not what
that's
people
not
want.
agency.
Right.
Because agency means ownership to me.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it as well.
Right? And so do the people in your company feel that they have ownership for the success of
Yeah.
What
I mean, I
happens.
feel definitely for my organization, I definitely feel like I have agency and dignity in my work.
So I just looked it up. It's also having a sense that you have influence over the outcome of things.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Because if
But that's ownership to me, like
Yeah.
that you own part of the and you know the thing that I always felt, and that's I think part of the problem of unionized environments, is that the leader is held responsible for everything,
Yeah.
and there's not agency because the union takes away the agency because they say, well, if something's going wrong in your organization, it has to be management's problem,
right.
and
Right.
so that
Which is not always the case.
Well, just look in a private company, how different that is. Everybody is kind of looks at each other. Okay, whose fault was it, or how did the problem happen, and then how can we solve it as a team?
I think an agency that is, or I think a company that's significant
Yeah.
doesn't immediately look to one thing
No.
to point out the problem.
no.
So that's
No.
where unions have it wrong.
Yeah.
yeah.
Because it's immediate. Yeah, of course. The union's going to look at the management. That's always how it goes. And management's going to look to the workers. Like that's just.
But when
that's
when
the cycle.
when an
But when you take a step
organization-
back and say, wait a second, it could be both of our faults.
Yeah.
But that's just a good thing in life in general to
But
say,
so is
whose fault is it?
But so
Let's
is
look into this.
So is success
Right.
part everybody's thing too. If there's agency and dignity,
Oh,
then everybody
in the negative
has
aspects
a piece.
of also the success.
Everybody has a piece of everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
If you've achieved something, it's not just
It's
management.
as an entire group.
and everybody's kind of personalities and ideas and what they bring to the table is respected, and there isn't the eye rolling
Yeah.
like in an environment where everybody has agency and dignity. Then people don't
roll eyes.
roll eyes and work on other projects while they're at a meeting because they are
They want to be in it.
contributing,
Yeah.
right? And that isn't always the responsibility of the leader. It also is the responsibility of the person to look for aspects of where they work where they can add
Yeah.
and
And I
not
think
just sit back.
I think every leadership team in probably many organizations that I've been a part of, like they want everyone to be involved in meetings. They push for that. They want cameras on. They want this. But sometimes like I don't know what happens, and maybe we'll hit on it in another part here, but we like as usually an employee, like I've been, there's something between that when I'm asked to be present and part of this meeting and almost lectured to do so. There's something in me, and I think there's something in every employee that's like, I don't want to.
Okay, but that comes to the whole point of, do you have agency in your company?
Right.
Like if you really feel you have ownership and
You just show up. You
then
don't have to
you
be
are
asked.
ready.
You don't have to be asked by leadership
No.
to do
And
that.
I think what happens, so that kind of just leads into the next point about how do we engage in conversations about significant things. And as he says in the book, Seth Godin, if we can't talk about significant things, then we can't really call ourselves professionals. So to me, that means that if you're sitting in a meeting with somebody and they are distracting to you and they are not allowing things, then I should be able to have a significant conversation with that person and say, what's up? Not a stop doing that conversation, but
No, that's
see
petty.
that
That's-
you're struggling. Like one of the things that I said to people all the time, I see that you're struggling. How can I support you? Some of the behaviors that I'm seeing from you show me that you are struggling. How can I support you? And so it's not just up to the leader to have that conversation. It's up to all of the people in the building to be aware of how everyone else is feeling as a professional and be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, it's just like a willingness to help everyone.
Yes. And you could be also able to have that with your leader.
Yes.
Like to be able to go in and say, hey, you've been really down lately. Like, is there anything that I can do to...
Or like from my side, there's definitely been moments where, we get assigned a whole bunch of different shows and jobs and they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't find a production manager to take on this show. I'm like, well, my calendar's open. I can take that on.
Right.
Like offering help and support in that way.
But if you don't have the significant
Right. If you
conversation,
don't want to,
then you really
Yeah.
aren't a professional because you
No.
aren't showing agency. You aren't giving the other person the dignity to say, I'm noticing this about you and I'm here. I'm part of this team.
right.
Let
and I
me
think
help.
if you don't have agency, then it's a discussion. Like we're saying all the things like if you don't have agency and you're like, okay, cool, but maybe it's time to think about why.
Right.
And maybe
who-
bring those conversations up with your leadership team. If you're feeling like listening to this conversation, you're already saying, oh, I would never put myself out there and like help someone else in the company because I don't get paid enough or I don't, whatever. Maybe you
Yeah.
need to have a discussion. Maybe
Yeah.
that's like a sparking.
And then it's the idea that how do you respond to someone who's interrupting you when you are trying to do something significant? Right?
I like that.
Who's kind of like distracting you from the thing that you know is significant and you need to do.
Well, and that's interesting because a manager can interrupt a team that's already working really well on something and throw things off by micromanaging or
Yeah.
focusing on one point. Or
sure.
a team member can interrupt the flow of everything that's happening
Right.
as well, or can interrupt a manager's overall plan. on
Yes.
things.
Right.
So-
And lots of those in lots of those ways it's a very personal, petty reason because it's like, I want to do this my way.
yeah.
And my way is going to shift everything that we've worked on, but because it's not the way I want it done, I don't care. I'm going to shift it the way so I want it done the way that I want it.
So
I've definitely worked with people like that. And
How
shifts.
did you respond to the
Well,
interrupt?
usually their leadership are above me, so usually you just say, "Okay, no problem."
But I think what Seth Godin is really saying is that we need a different style of leadership where that leader, and one of the things he says is, here's what I have made, help me make it better.
Right.
And so
Right.
if that's the kind of leadership style that you have in your company, and that's what people are living, then, this is the way we do things here. We all do things, but and you should also then be able to have the ability to say, I think it would be better if more people came to the table and gave their ideas.
Right. And I think usually the reason that that's happening in leadership is because they've done it the same way
Yes.
forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
And maybe they've done it the same way because they haven't upgraded their learning or education. They don't know another solution. So they're just like, this is what we've always done. This is what's safe. This is the way we do things.
Yeah,
So
and he
let's do it.
talks about safety in the book, like the difference between safety and significance, and how
Cool.
you
Yeah.
have to
You have to be unsafe at some capacity.
Yeah, and you have to be willing to support each other when everybody is feeling unsafe,
Right.
right? Because that's scary, right? So
We've never done this before this
No.
way. What's going to happen? Well, it's probably going to open up something in your organization that will make it more significant. Like
Yeah.
in most ways that I've seen, like in ways where I've been caught between a manager and something that I want to do a certain way, my first answer to it was, oh, okay, we'll just do it your way because that's easy and that's safe.
Right.
But in some cases I have gone, well, I understand that you've done it this way the entire time, but maybe if we try this way first, give it a shot, see how it goes, and then if it doesn't work, we can go back to the original solution.
right.
The
And
original
he
way.
is a sure,
And that has worked for you sometimes.
And that has worked a majority of the time.
Yeah.
yeah.
Or someone's just completely shut it down. And then in those cases, I have left the organization, like straight up. It's
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
taken a couple months, but I've realized, okay, this is me between a rock and a hard place. I'm gone because there's no give. And that's not fun to work at. That's not significant. I have no agency. I have no dignity because I'm just following the leader. And that's not fun or engaging for me as an employee.
Right. And, again, what he talks about, what are the characteristics of the best meeting? And this is what he says: clear intent and standards, contributions over attendance,
Interesting.
paying
Yeah,
attention to what needs to be done, and then doing it.
Yeah. So I can speak to many parts of this point. If a meeting doesn't have an agenda, I don't join it. That's what I say. So if I'm usually making the meetings, so I put my own agenda in, it can be 2 points. It can be 4 points. It doesn't have to be a crazy draft agenda with perfect headings and
Right.
no.
No,
But
this
if a
is
meeting
what we're
doesn't
talking
have
about.
an
Yeah.
agenda, I don't join it. And I say, or I message them and say, what are we talking about in this meeting? If if someone sends me a request,
Right.
because I don't want to join something where I'm blindsided with don't do that to
Yeah.
me. I don't want to do that to you. Don't do that to me.
I don't know. I was trying to figure out what contributions over attendance meant. Like,
Well,
I didn't.
So if someone can't make a meeting for whatever reason, but they send you an email that says, sorry, I couldn't make the meeting, but here's a whole bunch of ideas that I had in my discussion points that you could
Right.
contribute to the
Okay.
group. Great. What? Yeah. Okay. But but that's going back to like turning cameras off, like attendance. So
Right.
if people are showing up to your meeting and they aren't present and they just miss a whole bunch of meetings, that starts to be a discussion topic to me about, are they a good fit for this company?
Well, because if they're not attending or making a contribution,
Then what's the point of having
then
them on the
that's the
team?
thing.
And then they're dragging the team down, which is making them insignificant, probably.
Yep.
And the bottom thing to me is about my rule, where every meeting that I conducted had minutes, and
Sure.
the minutes said, "This is what is happening." Like, this is kind of the gist of what was said in the meeting, and this is who's responsible, and this is where it's going from here. Otherwise, what's the point?
Right. We always say next steps. So what are the next? I know it's probably cheesy corporate lingo.
No,
but
we always use the word action items.
Sure, action items, next steps. But if so at the end of the meeting, when the call's wrapping up and you can tell everyone's like getting ready to go, the countdown timer in Microsoft Teams or Zoom is going, your meeting has 5 minutes left. That's when it starts to spark the conversation. Okay, we've talked about all this stuff. We've hit everything on our agenda. What's the next steps? What are we doing next? And usually that's me saying, okay, I'm booking a meeting with this person to talk about this next problem that we have to solve, or I'm booking this gear next, and I'm sending in a production schedule to this person.
Yeah.
That's my next steps. I have a list of 3 items to complete. I will do that before the end of the day.
Right.
And then we're laughing because we had an agenda. We had people contribute sometimes. And then we just get the stuff done that needs to be done. And maybe it's a longer timeline. That's a short example of a
there's
timeline.
A lot of the things
Yeah.
you're working
You don't have to get it done
on
in the end of the day. That's a little bit ridiculous.
No,
But I
but
mean,
it depends.
Depends on the thing.
Like, a lot of your
situation.
projects are more long term.
No, but so then for me, the next sometimes actionable items is, okay, I need to reach out to these 3 people with an email.
Sure. What can I
And-
do today to
Yeah.
move the long-term project forward?
Yeah.
Would be what I would, because if you're meeting about something and then you're not doing anything about that meeting or having any next steps that same day, I say, what's the point of meeting?
And
And even
also-
when for us, like we do a lot of brainstorming meetings.
Sure.
So my actionable step is, okay, I'm going to send everybody the brainstorm. I want you to prioritize these, rank these so that I know what the top 2 priorities are.
Sweet.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the
that's
other thing
actionable
is,
items to do. Like, that's
if
great.
people don't see meetings being productive, they lose their agency and their
Yeah.
dignity, because they're like, okay, we've met 10 times
And nothing's been done.
and
We've
you know
brainstormed a
what that's
lot.
like,
Yep.
right? Because that was one of the issues that you felt was a big thing when you started your job, that people were like, okay, we've been talking about this for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, it might be time to
And
do
something that sparks, like with agency and dignity and that kind of meeting protocol, since I worked a project basis, I really love the line, and I used it when I was teaching, is to be the driving force on everything you do.
Yeah.
And that is just good advice to be. But
Well-
if you don't have someone who's a driving force on something, it never gets done, and you have 10 meetings and nothing's been accomplished.
then
and
you
you're sitting
become
in
the driving
So then,
force.
if you notice that happening, you become the driving force.
Well, and he says in his book that one of the things that is we should be part of the culture in our workplaces is, and that we should be teaching people to do, is doing more than is expected.
yeah,
And I think, like, as parents, we tried to raise you guys as not
To go
thinking
above and
of
beyond.
things, like to always look for a way to go above and beyond.
and sometimes it doesn't make sense to do that, and I
No.
get that. In certain places
Yeah, I
or
get
organizations, if you're working at Wendy's, do you want to go above and beyond? No, like probably not. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, there are some
He would
cases
say,
to try to, but
He
then,
would-
yeah, if you start going above and beyond, then they notice you, and then maybe you become a manager. Like,
Yeah.
who
Like,
knows?
if that's your,
And then you may,
So,
yeah.
and
there's-
just your example of driving force, like amongst the janitorial crew at the college, there are 2 or 3 people that smile. They're going in and cleaning dirty washrooms. Yet when they come out, they say hi, good morning. And then I had a student say to me, like, she goes, my best friend was so and so, the cleaner, because I had lots of conversations with him about everything, and I learned so much about Canadian culture just by talking to him. And I thought that
Yeah.
he valued international students and had a conversation with them.
yeah, that's,
I don't know his name, but
I mean-
it's the guy that you recorded his accordion group.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, that gentleman specifically at the college is a phenomenal custodian and
Yeah.
just an amazing, talented person. He worked with like the famous accordion player that has like a movie made about him.
Yeah,
I don't know
the
what he's
Polish
called.
guy from St. Catharines. I
Yeah,
don't
he's
remember
very
his name.
famous. He has like
so
a bunch
what
of
is
movies.
your
Anyway,
definition then of true service?
true service,
Yeah.
like customer service
Yes,
is what I'm
customer,
thinking
because
of.
he does a whole thing in the book about like customer service, and he has that with the car wash. There's a story in there about a car wash. I don't know if
Okay.
you remember it.
Yes.
Where the guy hired disabled people
Oh
to
yes,
run his car wash, and they ended up being the most like
Popular or
busiest,
busy.
popular
Car
car
wash
wash
in the area.
in the area. And it was basically just because of the service of what he taught his people, to just like give what the customer what they want.
yeah.
It's that whole thing of like the customer is always right. Like whatever, you're trying to meet the needs of the customer.
Yes, I say a couple things to that.
98%.
The customer is always right,
no.
Sometimes
But-
the customer doesn't
but
know.
but sometimes the customer doesn't know, and then you have to educate
Right.
them on that.
Right. I mean, a difference between washing a car.
But- Full service, true service is educating your client on what they need to know in order for the success of the business, the whatever. You have
and
to
I'm gonna
educate
use-
fully,
Yeah.
educate that client.
And I'm going to give an example of when I first became a principal and I was assigned a school that was very high end.
Yeah.
Like it had parents that I felt would be very well informed about the curriculum.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I got there and I found out that they actually knew nothing.
Right.
And so I educated, this is what your child's classroom should look like. This is what they should be bringing home. This is what they're learning in math.
And why are they not?
And so that way, I felt that I was giving them true service because
Yeah.
I was telling them, like, what they were coming to me about was, why aren't there microwaves in the classroom?
Right.
Who cares? Like,
Yeah, who
that
cares?
doesn't
Matter.
going to make your kid into a better student.
Right.
Or
They can heat up their lunch, which might feed them and
But
fuel
the
them for the day,
problem
which might make
was-
them a better student.
the
But
problem
that's
was
fine.
that then these kids were bringing like bowls of soup and spilling them all, like grade 2 kids.
They needed to be educated. There needed to be a microwave class, and then they could put.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
if people don't know, then sometimes they're asking you for things as part of your
Sure.
service that are
Ridiculous.
completely ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, I from the side, like another part of true service would be like if there's a competitor. So I work in the AV space in Toronto, and there's lots of competitors that do the same service, probably the exact same way, and you'd get the same product out of it most of the time. What we do that's different is if a client that we trust, okay, sure, you look at the price tag on our stuff, it's expensive. They go to a different company, wow, it's so much cheaper. Why? And they come to us and we spend the time educating them, going line by line through their invoices or quotes and saying, hey, yeah, like this is fine. Like this will work for you, but you're missing a couple items on this that might affect your event. And we'll be honest about that. They could do it the same way,
Yeah.
but we're going to like, there's no promise,
You're a step up.
but we'll probably do it better.
Yeah.
And it's not, nasty. It's not petty with the other
No.
company. It's just, hey, this is what your quote, you're being quoted on this. That's a fair price. But listen, it's probably not going to end up being the same image or picture for your event or final product that you
Right.
want. And that's fine. If you want to go for that cheaper
Yes,
solution,
but you're
go
giving
for it.
you're giving them a choice.
We're
and I
educating
think
them.
that that's another thing about what true service is about, that you explain the person's choices clearly.
And saying, yeah, it is more expensive for sure. You got us.
But
we are more
these are-
expensive, but here's
are
why.
These are your clear choices,
Yeah.
right? Like it's when you go to buy a pair of shoes or something, or a set of golf clubs, and the person explains, well, this is what you'll get out of this, and this is what you're going to get out of the set that's $599, and
Yes. And what isn't true service is a sales type person selling something knowing that they're
Yes.
just getting commission and just making a deal.
right, exactly.
I would rather
Upselling.
And every business has to do it to make money. We get it. But you can upsell in honest ways.
Yeah.
You can be
So-
honest about the final product in a way that you can still upsell it. If you're a good salesperson, I believe you can do that without being like sleazy about
Yeah.
it. You can just say, this is more expensive, 100%. I'm going to make a good commission off of that if you buy that. It's a way better product than X because of, ABC.
Whatever.
Like, be honest, and people will probably buy more of your stuff. Or, yeah, it's not a sales podcast right now, but
No.
that's true
so
service.
what do you look for in a coach or a mentor for yourself?
For myself, direct communication, honesty, and understanding when a mistake is made.
Yeah.
Those three things.
Like compassion when a mistake is
Not
made.
compassion. You can be
You can
upset,
say that was stupid,
That was
but
dumb.
you haven't lost your job.
but know that everyone in every
Mm-hmm.
capacity is still learning and figuring it out, and no one really knows what they're doing if they're honest.
Right.
So
Not 100%
any
of
coach
the
or
time.
mentor that's screaming at you and saying, or like even threatening to get rid of your job is not a mentor worth keeping.
or is unavailable to you.
Well, yeah, then they're not a mentor. They're just a boss
Yeah.
or someone who just doesn't respond to emails very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you feel the most important skills that you bring to your workplace environment are? Because he talks a lot about like the new kind of soft skills that
What the young people bring.
I think I bring a lot of just, as silly as it sounds, just crazy positive energy all the time. And it's not to a point of where I'm burning myself out with positive energy. It's not a fake positivity. It's just, I haven't defined it yet, but I think it's like a direct positivity is what I would call it, what I would define it as. And it's just
but to me
me
that
bringing because I think there's lots of times in lots of situations where there's lots of complaints in my industry because, oh, this client's not responding to this email. This is going wrong on this show. And I have a realization very early on that everything will go wrong and is going to go wrong. And you can either live like that and be sad and negative in it, or you can just flip and say, no, I'm going to just be ready to solve it when it comes, and who cares?
But that to me is like you're bringing that ingenuity, positivity, problem solving, like those kinds of skills to the table.
Right.
And those, like, he talks a lot about the difference between, like, you can have a really skilled person, and he calls them tricksters who just bring everybody down.
Yep.
They don't, like, and he feels like
they're kept in a company because they know the skills, but they would be better for the rest of the company if they didn't work there because of how negative they are.
But 80% of any job is just people skills, and then the 20% is
because
just
you can always learn.
Like what software you know, like all that crap. Like if you know Excel, great, that's 20%, cool. But if you don't have people skills, if you can't sit in a group of people and work with them and pull ideas out of people or input ideas, then there's no point.
But he's talking about things like creativity and like all those kinds of skills that.
Yeah, I think I'm creative.
And he's also talking about people being taught those skills, like that we're actually in a time in society when we actually need to start teaching those skills again.
Right.
Sure.
Because people are not.
Yeah, I know what a parabola is, but I was never taught. I was never taught people skill. I mean, other than just learning it in school as you go and being parented correctly.
Explicit.
But no, like there should definitely be some sort of, in college or high school, a people skills course and how to work with a team. And those things get taught, but there are some people that don't get it still.
Yeah, and I mean,
As mean as that sounds, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks a lot about how like developing a culture in the workplace, and it's very similar to like trying to have a culture where what is more important is the actual people skills, because if you have those kinds of skills and those kinds of cooperation in place, then the skill part comes easier, like the work.
And
so developing culture in the workplace.
It'd be interesting to know what you think. How does a company develop a really good culture?
I think the problem that arises is immediately saying the word develop. You can't develop a good culture, I don't believe. I think you have to organically create one with creating an open workplace that you're allowed to work from home, you're allowed to create your own opportunities. If you follow everything on the top of the list that we talked about, you'll have a good culture.
Well,
I think that's the backwards thinking that people want this great culture.
Down to, like for me, when I was working as a principal, social was what supposedly developed the good culture.
No,
like,
no one
going out and doing things together.
And that's great. That's fine.
It's fine, and I'm going to say that in my particular place, people were being paid super well. So I think the number one thing about having a good culture where people want to contribute and do all that is to actually pay people what they're worth. And when helps. You do that
helps for sure.
And a living wage.
Yep.
Based on what
then people can think about things like, oh, I do want to go out after work because I can, afford rent and groceries and all these things.
I don't have to go for my next part-time job.
But I also think that culture also comes from that idea that I am here to contribute something better and make like what he says, what is significance? It's caring about what you're doing and doing something that matters. Work that matters is significant.
Right.
So the culture does not need to come from going whitewater rafting together, which
that builds rapport and friendship and which is great to have in a workplace.
Fine. But the actual culture comes from what you are doing. and making it significant and what matters.
Right.
Like for me, I had a hard time not getting that the people in my building were not concerned about the success of the children.
Right.
That they were more
The main
concerned
part of a school?
about going
Yeah.
out for drinks on Friday night, and
Yeah.
that was what was
That's
significant
significant to them, which is wrong.
Which is you got to care about the work you're doing and do something that matters. And
And we could say it's as easy as finding people that care about that stuff, but that's harder than it seems. Like if it's like there are lots of people out in the world that will just do a job because of the cool things that they do outside of the office.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
And-
they work to live, and
And yeah, there's definitely a weird cross section of both those things. Yeah, it's about what's in the what we're doing today.
I was a waiter for a long time, needing to make money to pay for university, and I could have had the attitude of, "Ugh, I'm just doing this because I need the cash,"
Right.
but I still had the idea that I wanted to help these people have a good evening out, and I know.
But
Part of
what
it was,
gave you that idea?
I don't know, and it wasn't even to get a good tip. It was
Right.
It was just
Well, that was
because then
probably
I
in the
had
back
a
of your
better I
mind.
had a better day if that's how I thought.
You
and
had a better
acted.
day
Work,
Yeah.
work that matters.
because you felt significant.
And I think what Seth Godin would say, if you don't have that about what you're doing, then
Change
you're not
jobs.
doing the right thing.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think
he's-
that's a huge issue, and this goes to a whole different conversation in
Sorry,
a different
go ahead.
podcast.
Yeah.
But it's people in the world, like young people specifically, going to study a job because that's what their guidance counselor told them to do.
Right.
But it is not described to them in a way of, this is a really cool job opportunity and you get to do X, Y, Z when you finish school. It's, oh, this is a really good degree, you'll make a lot of money.
Well,
Right.
and the
Yeah,
difference
there's a lot of that.
And there's lots of parents that are like that too, that are
Yeah.
like, oh, we just want to put you through this program to be a doctor because that makes a lot of money. But if they hate being a doctor,
Yeah.
they're not going to feel significant. And then that's why things fail and organizations fail. It's
Yeah.
because there's
But he
those
does
people
talk
out there.
about that a lot. Like if you can't get yourself to feel a significance in your job,
Switch jobs.
if you can't care about it, and he also talks about how
I had a hard time trimming pine trees and feeling significant.
Yeah.
about
Right.
that.
But I mean,
so you shouldn't be doing that really because
But that's a
somebody
stepping
would
stone.
find
But
that.
I know
It's a
that
stepping
there are
stone.
landscapers who would like thrive
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of finding that. And the last point I just wanted to talk, and he does talk about how people of your generation particularly are going to move from job to job.
Oh, way
a
more
lot,
frequently.
Way
Yeah.
more frequently. So the final one I just wanted to say is, what do you do to move past mistakes? Like to get past when you've made a mistake?
oopsie whoopsie and move on.
What does that mean?
Just say oopsie whoopsie and try again the next time. I don't know. I mean, that's
But,
like,
and you're obviously not, no one's coming down on you hard.
But
They-
think
oh, if it's a big mistake and someone comes down on you about it, I mean, usually in those cases, you're usually completely oblivious to what happened.
so. Just think a couple jobs ago when
Yeah.
you made a mistake and the client and you had to come up with a solution that was a band-aid solution, but there was no other solution for the client, and the client still was happy with you in the final outcome. Like the audio, you didn't do the audio.
Oh, or the audio didn't record properly or messed up, which is a scary thing to talk about on a podcast. Thank you very much. So this better work. No, but I think the solution is you just immediately become open and honest about the mistake. Immediately.
But how many days do you think that kind of weighed you down and made you like upset?
In the beginning, like a week, after a week or 2 weeks, I would still think about that one job, because the saying in my industry is you're only as good as your last production, which is a very
That's
very
high
red
pressure.
flag.
I
high
would
pressure.
say here's the saying in education: you're
Yeah.
only as good as your most difficult student.
Yeah. So I mean, it keeps us humble and honest,
Yeah.
but I don't think you need to like bear down your entire career with that line within any job. Like if there's a
And
specific,
don't you think that's a lot to do with your own mindset?
Yes.
Like not letting your thoughts.
and we have a very loud neighbor.
Welcome to motorcycle land.
Hey, it's fine. I mean, they're just, yeah.
anyway, not like actually.
They're feeling significant on their bikes.
I can see that. But
Sad.
but your own
Sad
mindset.
that that's what brings them
your own mindset, like not letting those thoughts control you and just.
Yeah, and realizing early on, I think that no one tells you is that everyone does not know what they're doing. Like everybody in every career does not know what they're doing.
Yeah.
100% of the time.
100% of the time.
I hope my surgeon knows.
Oh
what
yeah,
he's doing.
okay. When you get to those kind of jobs, yes, they
Yes.
do know something. But for the most part, we're all learning, we're all figuring it out. So if you keep that in the back of your mind, you make a mistake. Well, okay, everyone else is going to probably learn from that mistake, or also they've made it in the past and they're like, oh darn, yeah, that happened to me a couple of years ago, and we'll work to make it not happen again.
And I think that's a big thing in leadership, right? Is learning how to train the people underneath, like who are working for you or with you, to see mistakes as learning opportunities. Like that's a huge leadership.
As cheesy
thing.
as it is, yeah.
It's a huge learning. It is cheesy, but it's
Yeah.
important. So anyway, that's our kind of discussion, unless somebody can think of something else. I think that's a lot of
Yeah.
the points you made. And I would highly recommend that if you are working as a leader or you have a company, that this is a really good book to read.
And the one point that didn't come up that I would love to just like put a button on for all organizations and all leadership, if they're listening to this, is working from home will not change your culture. Working from home is the new future. If you do not get ahead of it, you will be left behind.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's just the way it's going. If you hate it, if you are seething listening to this right now and you say, everyone has to come in here, change your mindset, read the book, educate yourself, because it is going to change. And if you don't follow, it'll take you out.
People will quit working for you,
Yeah.
and then you won't have
If you
anybody.
have a kind of a business or something where it is important for people to come in, then you have to figure out ways
Yep.
to make
It worth their
it
while.
significant and worth their while to
come in.
there.
Yeah. And not just saying, oh, it's great in the office.
No.
Because every office is great
Yeah.
to be in, if that's
Well,
your
and
argument.
I also like, there are places where it would be better if people came in more, but I also think that you have to.
I still don't think so. I still will argue every single time. If you can join a Zoom meeting, if you can join a Teams meeting, if you can chat with someone on a Zoom chat, Teams chat, whatever, Slack,
There,
you can
that's the
still
word.
be
Slack.
chat. You can still be as productive every time. It's just true. And if people aren't, yeah.
But the thing about Zoom and Slack and Reddit chats and everywhere the other ones is if you're not on, like, there's a lot of things that happen when you walk past each other in the hallway and you say, oh, let's grab a coffee. And until it becomes the norm while you're on Zoom and you see names scrolling up on the Slack feed and you're like, oh, so-and-so, I haven't talked to him for a long time. And you say, hey, do you have 15 minutes? Let's have tea on camera and talk.
That happens all the time. All the time in my organization. It's not...
Yes. But,
it doesn't in my generation.
I'm going to end
crazy.
with this because I'm going to say that it doesn't matter how your organization is functioning, whether everyone's coming in or everyone's online. What you have to be measuring is significance, productivity, whether people are caring, whether people are engaged, whether
That's the
they
real
are doing
measurements.
work that
Yeah.
matters and moves the organization forward. And if people are not coming in and that's not happening, then maybe you may better relook at things. But if you're in an organization where people are online all the time and all those things are happening, then you should be sitting back and thanking your lucky stars that you have people in your organization that have found agency, dignity, and significance. And that's
Perfect way to end it.
yeah. All right. And then, so for August, we actually are going to do our back to school episode, and I've invited my friend Rita to come on.
Another former principal.
And
Educator.
we're going to talk
Fun.
about back to school. So that will be August 15th. So thanks for joining us on No Room for Phonies. and Sebastian and the Song of Significance.
My album will be dropping. No, I'm just kidding.
Good night.